Question 1. Strategic planning requires a Federal Air Marshal Service (FAMS) agent in New York to consider the most appropriate method for sharing critical operational intelligence with a vetted partner agency in New Jersey, given the sensitive nature of the information and the regulatory environment governing FAMS data. Option A. Disclose the intelligence verbally during a scheduled, but unrecorded, briefing session with representatives from the partner agency. Option B. Submit a formal documented request through established interagency information sharing protocols, ensuring all necessary approvals are obtained and the transfer is logged. Option C. Share the intelligence informally via a secure messaging application directly with the point of contact at the partner agency. Option D. Refuse to share any information, citing FAMS operational security concerns, without exploring any authorized sharing mechanisms. Correct answer is B. Submit a formal documented request through established interagency information sharing protocols, ensuring all necessary approvals are obtained and the transfer is logged. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for information with the strict legal and ethical obligations surrounding the handling of sensitive operational data. The Federal Air Marshal Service (FAMS) operates under stringent federal regulations and internal policies designed to protect operational security and individual privacy. Mismanagement of such information can have severe consequences, including compromising national security, violating privacy laws, and undermining public trust. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any information sharing adheres to established protocols and legal frameworks. The best professional approach involves a formal, documented request through established channels. This method ensures that the sharing of sensitive information is authorized, tracked, and compliant with all relevant federal regulations, such as those governing classified information and law enforcement data. By adhering to these established procedures, the FAMS officer demonstrates a commitment to operational security, legal compliance, and ethical conduct. This approach prioritizes the integrity of FAMS operations and the lawful use of sensitive data. Sharing the information without proper authorization or documentation is professionally unacceptable. This could involve circumventing established protocols, which may violate federal regulations concerning the handling of sensitive operational data and potentially expose classified information. Such actions could lead to disciplinary action, compromise ongoing investigations, and erode the trust placed in FAMS personnel. Another professionally unacceptable approach is to refuse to share the information at all, even when a legitimate, authorized need exists. While caution is necessary, outright refusal without exploring proper channels can hinder interagency cooperation and impede critical law enforcement or national security efforts. This demonstrates a lack of understanding of collaborative responsibilities and may violate directives that encourage information sharing under specific, controlled circumstances. Finally, attempting to share the information informally through unsecure means, such as personal communication devices or unsecured networks, is also professionally unacceptable. This method poses a significant risk of data breaches, unauthorized access, and violation of federal data protection laws. It demonstrates a disregard for operational security and the sensitive nature of the information being handled. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the nature of the request and the sensitivity of the information involved. They must then consult relevant FAMS policies, federal regulations, and legal guidance to determine the appropriate procedures for information dissemination. If authorized channels exist, they should be utilized. If ambiguity arises, seeking clarification from supervisors or legal counsel is paramount. This systematic approach ensures that all actions are legally sound, ethically justifiable, and operationally secure. Question 2. Quality control measures reveal that a security vulnerability has been exploited, potentially exposing sensitive operational data within the Federal Air Marshal Service (FAMS) in California. Leadership is aware that rumors are circulating among personnel regarding the extent of the breach and its potential implications. What is the most appropriate course of action for FAMS leadership to manage this situation? Option A. Immediately implement a complete communication blackout regarding the incident, instructing all personnel not to discuss it internally or externally, and to await further instructions that may never come. Option B. Release a general statement to the public and all FAMS personnel that a minor security glitch occurred and has been resolved, without providing any specific details or acknowledging the potential for data exposure. Option C. Initiate immediate disciplinary investigations into all personnel suspected of spreading rumors, without addressing the underlying security incident or providing any official information. Option D. Issue a clear, concise, and authorized internal communication to all affected personnel acknowledging the security incident, outlining the steps being taken to investigate and mitigate the breach, and reinforcing existing security protocols, while refraining from disclosing specific details that could further compromise security. The correct answer is D. Issue a clear, concise, and authorized internal communication to all affected personnel acknowledging the security incident, outlining the steps being taken to investigate and mitigate the breach, and reinforcing existing security protocols, while refraining from disclosing specific details that could further compromise security. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between maintaining operational security and ensuring the well-being of personnel, particularly when dealing with sensitive information that could impact morale and operational effectiveness. The Federal Air Marshal Service, FAMS, operates under strict guidelines that prioritize national security, but also recognize the importance of a healthy and informed workforce. The challenge lies in balancing these competing interests without compromising either. The best approach involves a structured and transparent communication strategy that prioritizes the dissemination of accurate information through official channels, while simultaneously implementing robust security protocols to prevent unauthorized disclosure. This approach is correct because it aligns with FAM's directives on information management and personnel welfare. By providing clear, authorized updates, leadership can mitigate the spread of rumors and misinformation, thereby maintaining morale and focus. Simultaneously, reinforcing security measures ensures that sensitive operational details remain protected, upholding the core mission of the FAMS. This method respects the need for both operational integrity and personnel trust. An incorrect approach would be to completely suppress any discussion or acknowledgement of the security breach, hoping it will go unnoticed or resolve itself. This fails to address the legitimate concerns of personnel and can foster an environment of distrust and speculation, potentially leading to decreased morale and operational effectiveness. It also overlooks the ethical obligation to inform personnel about matters that could affect their work environment and security. Another incorrect approach would be to release broad, unverified information to the public or to all personnel without proper vetting or context. This risks further compromising security by inadvertently revealing sensitive details or causing undue alarm. It also demonstrates a lack of control over information dissemination and can erode confidence in leadership's ability to manage critical situations. Finally, an approach that focuses solely on disciplinary action against individuals suspected of leaking information, without addressing the underlying reasons for the breach or the need for clear communication, is also flawed. While accountability is important, it should not come at the expense of transparency and proactive communication with the broader workforce. This reactive stance can create a climate of fear rather than fostering a culture of security awareness and trust. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with assessing the nature and scope of the information in question, considering its potential impact on both security and personnel. This should be followed by consulting relevant FAMS policies and directives regarding information security and internal communication. The next step involves developing a communication plan that balances the need for transparency with the imperative of security, identifying appropriate channels and messaging. Finally, implementing and monitoring the effectiveness of the chosen approach, with a willingness to adapt as the situation evolves, is crucial for effective leadership. Question 3. Strategic planning requires a thorough understanding of information access protocols. A federal air marshal, while working on a high-profile case in Illinois, believes a colleague in another FAMS field office possesses crucial, unshared intelligence that could significantly advance the investigation. The marshal is eager to obtain this information quickly to prevent potential threats. What is the most appropriate course of action to acquire this intelligence? Option A. Share the general nature of the case with a trusted supervisor outside the direct chain of command for the investigation, hoping they can facilitate the information transfer. Option B. Contact the colleague directly via personal phone or email to request the information, emphasizing the urgency of the situation. Option C. Proceed with the investigation based on available information, assuming the colleague will share the intelligence if it becomes relevant to their own work. Option D. Submit a formal, written request through the established FAMS interoffice communication channels, clearly detailing the case and the specific information required. The correct answer is D. Submit a formal written request through the established FAMS interoffice communication channels, clearly detailing the case and the specific information required. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for information with the strict legal and ethical obligations surrounding the handling of sensitive law enforcement data. The Federal Air Marshal Service, FAMS, operates under stringent federal regulations and internal policies designed to protect the integrity of investigations and the privacy of individuals. Mismanagement of such information can lead to compromised investigations, legal repercussions, and a breach of public trust. Careful judgment is required to ensure that all actions are compliant with the law and FAMS protocols. The best professional practice involves adhering strictly to established FAMS procedures for information dissemination. This means formally requesting the information through the designated channels, which typically involve submitting a written request to the appropriate FAMS unit or supervisor, clearly stating the purpose of the request and the specific information needed. This approach ensures that the information is accessed and used only by authorized personnel for legitimate purposes, maintaining an audit trail and upholding the chain of command. This aligns with federal regulations governing the handling of law enforcement-sensitive information, which emphasize controlled access and accountability. Disseminating the information without following formal procedures is professionally unacceptable. This could involve sharing details verbally with colleagues not directly involved in the investigation or forwarding unverified information through informal communication channels. Such actions bypass established security protocols, potentially exposing sensitive data to unauthorized individuals or leading to the spread of misinformation. This violates federal guidelines on information security and could be construed as a breach of duty, undermining the integrity of FAMS operations and potentially jeopardizing ongoing investigations. Another professionally unacceptable approach is to delay the request indefinitely due to perceived minor bureaucratic hurdles. While efficiency is important, circumventing established protocols in favor of expediency can lead to significant compliance issues. This approach fails to recognize the importance of the established procedures in safeguarding sensitive information and maintaining accountability. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes legal compliance and adherence to organizational policy. When faced with a need for information, the first step should be to identify the relevant FAMS policies and federal regulations governing its access and dissemination. If unsure, seeking guidance from a supervisor or the FAMS legal counsel is paramount. The process should always involve utilizing official channels for requests and ensuring that all information sharing is documented and authorized. This systematic approach mitigates risks and ensures that actions are both effective and compliant. Question 4. Governance review demonstrates a need to refine the application of force and de-escalation protocols for federal air marshals operating on flights within the United States. Considering the legal framework and operational realities, which of the following best describes the appropriate response when an individual exhibits increasingly agitated behavior, makes vague but concerning statements about the flight's safety, and appears to be reaching into a bag, but no weapon is immediately visible? Option A. Immediately assess the individual's behavior for objective reasonableness of threat, attempt de-escalation if feasible and safe, and prepare to use the minimum force necessary to neutralize any imminent threat to the safety of the aircraft or its occupants, in accordance with Title 49 of the United States Code. Option B. Focus on de-escalating the situation through verbal commands and passenger reassurance, delaying any physical intervention until a weapon is clearly visible or a direct physical assault occurs, to avoid unnecessary escalation. Option C. Prioritize maintaining passenger comfort and avoiding any disruption, intervening only if the individual's actions directly impede the flight crew's ability to operate the aircraft. Option D. Immediately detain the individual and apply force to secure them, based on the perceived intent and the concerning statements, without further assessment or de-escalation attempts. The correct answer is A. Immediately assess the individual's behavior for objective reasonableness of threat, attempt de-escalation if feasible and safe, and prepare to use the minimum force necessary to neutralize any imminent threat to the safety of the aircraft or its occupants, in accordance with Title 49 of the United States Code. Explanation: Governance review demonstrates a need to enhance the understanding and application of federal regulations pertaining to the use of force and de-escalation techniques within the Federal Air Marshal Service, FAMS, in the United States. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires air marshals to make split-second decisions in high-stakes environments where the safety of passengers, crew, and themselves is paramount, while simultaneously adhering to strict legal and policy guidelines. The pressure of potential threats, coupled with the need for precise judgment, necessitates a robust understanding of the legal framework governing their actions. The correct approach involves prioritizing immediate threat assessment and the application of the least intrusive means necessary to neutralize that threat, consistent with FAMS policies and Title 49 of the United States Code. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with the legal mandate to protect civil aviation and its passengers by using force only when objectively reasonable and necessary to prevent death or serious bodily harm. It emphasizes a graduated response, starting with de-escalation and moving to force only as a last resort, thereby minimizing unnecessary harm and upholding legal standards. An incorrect approach that relies solely on perceived intent without concrete actions to support it fails to meet the objective reasonableness standard required by law. This can lead to the unwarranted use of force, violating individuals' rights and potentially leading to legal repercussions for the air marshal and the FAMS. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes passenger comfort over immediate security concerns, even in the presence of a credible, albeit subtle, threat, could result in a catastrophic failure to prevent an act of unlawful interference. This demonstrates a misunderstanding of the primary mission and the legal justification for the FAM's existence. Finally, an approach that delays necessary intervention due to an over-reliance on secondary confirmation, when immediate action is clearly warranted by observable behavior and intelligence, risks allowing a threat to materialize, thereby failing in the core duty to protect. Professional reasoning in such situations requires a continuous assessment of the totality of circumstances, applying established training and legal precedents. Air marshals must be trained to recognize escalating behaviors, understand the legal thresholds for intervention, and be proficient in de-escalation techniques. The decision-making process should be guided by a clear understanding of the objective reasonableness standard, the graduated use of force continuum, and the paramount importance of passenger and crew safety within the legal framework established by U.S. federal law. Question 5. Strategic planning requires Air Marshal Agent Miller to assess the most effective method for responding to a new, urgent operational directive received via an unofficial communication channel from a trusted colleague. Considering the Federal Air Marshal Service's operational environment in California, which of the following represents the most prudent and professionally responsible course of action? Option A. Immediately contact the FAM's National Operations Center, NOC, to verify the authenticity and authorization of the directive before taking any action or disseminating it. Option B. Ignore the directive entirely, as it did not come through official FAMS channels. Option C. Proceed with implementing the directive as it was received, assuming the colleague's information is accurate due to their trusted status. Option D. Forward the directive to other air marshals in the California region to gauge their understanding and potential actions. The correct answer is A. Immediately contact the FAM's National Operations Center, NOC, to verify the authenticity and authorization of the directive before taking any action or disseminating it. Explanation: the scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between operational security and the need for clear, consistent communication within a critical federal agency. The Federal Air Marshal Service, FAMS, operates under strict protocols designed to maintain the highest levels of aviation security. Misinformation or ambiguity in directives can have severe consequences, impacting officer readiness, mission effectiveness, and public safety. Therefore, the judgment required is to ensure that all communications are accurate, authorized, and disseminated through established channels, respecting the chain of command and the integrity of operational information. The best approach involves adhering strictly to established FAMS communication protocols and directives. This means verifying the authenticity and authorization of any new operational guidance through official FAMS channels, such as the FAM's National Operations Center, NOC, or direct communication with a supervisor. This method ensures that information received is legitimate, has undergone proper vetting, and is intended for dissemination. This aligns with the FAMS operational manual and federal guidelines for law enforcement agencies, which emphasize the importance of authorized communication channels to prevent the spread of misinformation and maintain operational security. Ethical considerations also mandate that air marshals act only on verified intelligence and directives to avoid compromising missions or endangering passengers. An incorrect approach would be to immediately implement the new guidance based solely on an informal communication from a fellow air marshal. This bypasses established verification procedures and the chain of command. Such an action could lead to acting on false or outdated information, potentially compromising a mission, misallocating resources, or even creating a security risk. This violates the principle of acting only on authorized directives, a core tenet of federal law enforcement operations. Another incorrect approach is to disregard the new guidance entirely without attempting to verify its authenticity. While caution is warranted, outright dismissal without inquiry can lead to missed critical operational updates. This could result in an air marshal being unprepared for a real threat or failing to execute a necessary security measure, thereby undermining the FAMS mission. It demonstrates a lack of proactive engagement with potentially vital information. Finally, attempting to disseminate the new guidance to other air marshals without verification is also professionally unacceptable. This action could rapidly spread unconfirmed or false information throughout the service, creating widespread confusion and potentially leading multiple officers to act on incorrect directives. This directly contravenes the responsibility to ensure the accuracy and authorization of information before sharing it, which is paramount in a high-stakes security environment. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes verification and adherence to established protocols. When encountering new operational information, the first step should always be to confirm its source and authorization through official channels. If verification is not immediately possible, the next step is to consult with a supervisor. This systematic process ensures that actions are based on reliable intelligence and authorized directives, upholding the integrity and effectiveness of the FAMS mission. Question 6. Strategic planning requires Air Marshal John to consider various response protocols when faced with a credible, immediate threat to aircraft safety during a flight over the state of California. Which of the following approaches best reflects the mandated operational priorities and legal considerations for a federal air marshal in such a critical situation? Option A. Immediately begin collecting all potential evidence from the scene before addressing any active threat. Option B. Defer primary response actions to the flight crew and observe the situation until further instructions are received. Option C. Neutralize the immediate threat to life and safety, then secure the immediate area and preserve any potential evidence. Option D. Apprehend and detain all individuals who appear suspicious before assessing the overall threat level. The correct answer is C. Neutralize the immediate threat to life and safety, then secure the immediate area and preserve any potential evidence. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an air marshal to balance immediate threat assessment and response with adherence to strict operational protocols and legal mandates governing the use of force and evidence preservation. The pressure of a potential threat, coupled with the need to maintain situational awareness and secure evidence, demands a highly disciplined and analytical approach. The best professional practice involves prioritizing the immediate neutralization of any credible threat to passenger and crew safety, followed by securing the immediate area and any potential evidence. This approach aligns with the core mission of the Federal Air Marshal Service, FAMS, to deter and defeat aviation terrorism. Specifically, FAMS operational guidelines and the legal framework surrounding law enforcement actions on aircraft emphasize the paramount importance of safeguarding lives. Once the immediate threat is contained, the focus shifts to preserving the scene for subsequent investigation, which is crucial for accountability and understanding the full scope of the incident. This methodical approach ensures that the primary objective of safety is met, while also laying the groundwork for a thorough post-incident analysis. An incorrect approach would be to immediately focus on collecting all potential evidence before fully neutralizing any active threat. This could lead to a compromised safety situation, as the air marshal's attention would be divided, potentially allowing a threat to escalate. Furthermore, the legal justification for the use of force is directly tied to the immediacy and severity of the threat. Delaying neutralization to gather evidence would undermine this justification and endanger lives. Another professionally unacceptable approach would be to apprehend and detain individuals without first securing the immediate area and assessing the overall threat landscape. While apprehension is a necessary step, it must be done in a manner that does not compromise the safety of the aircraft or its occupants. Prematurely focusing on individual apprehension without a comprehensive threat assessment could leave other potential threats unaddressed. Finally, an approach that involves solely relying on the flight crew to manage the situation after a potential threat is identified, without taking decisive action, would be a significant failure. While cooperation with the flight crew is essential, the Air Marshal's primary responsibility is to act as a law enforcement officer to mitigate threats. Abdicating this responsibility would be a dereliction of duty and a violation of FAMS operational mandates. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes threat assessment and neutralization, followed by scene security and evidence preservation. This framework involves continuous situational awareness, adherence to established protocols, and a clear understanding of legal authorities and responsibilities. The ability to make rapid, informed decisions under extreme pressure is paramount. Question 7. The assessment process reveals a significant operational challenge for the Federal Air Marshal Service FAMS in California concerning the integration of a new biometric screening technology designed to enhance aviation security. Considering the FAMS mandate and federal guidelines for technology adoption, which implementation strategy would best address this challenge while ensuring compliance and effectiveness? Option A. Immediately deploy the new biometric technology across all FAMS operations in California to maximize its security impact without delay. Option B. Implement the new biometric technology through a phased pilot program in select California airports, allowing for thorough testing, personnel training, and data analysis before a full-scale rollout. Option C. Postpone the implementation of the new biometric technology indefinitely until all potential concerns regarding passenger inconvenience are fully resolved. Option D. Acquire the most advanced biometric technology available and deploy it across California FAMS operations, assuming personnel can adapt to its use without formal, extensive training. The correct answer is B. Implement the new biometric technology through a phased pilot program in select California airports, allowing for thorough testing, personnel training, and data analysis before a full-scale rollout. Explanation: the assessment process reveals a critical implementation challenge for the Federal Air Marshal Service, FAMS, in California regarding the integration of new biometric screening technology. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the imperative of enhanced security with the practicalities of operational deployment, including personnel training, data privacy, and potential disruptions to passenger flow. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the implementation adheres to all relevant federal regulations and FAMS operational guidelines without compromising mission effectiveness or civil liberties. The best approach involves a phased, pilot-based implementation strategy. This entails conducting a controlled test of the new biometric technology in a limited number of high-traffic California airports. This pilot phase allows for thorough evaluation of the technology's performance, identification of unforeseen operational hurdles, and comprehensive training of FAMS personnel in a real-world, yet contained, environment. Crucially, this phased approach allows for the collection of data to assess the technology's impact on security effectiveness and passenger experience before a full-scale rollout. This aligns with the FAMS mandate to ensure aviation security through proactive measures, while also adhering to federal guidelines on the responsible adoption of new technologies, which often necessitate rigorous testing and validation, to ensure efficacy and compliance with privacy laws, such as those that might be enacted or interpreted under federal authority concerning data handling. An approach that prioritizes immediate, full-scale deployment across all California airports without prior testing is professionally unacceptable. This would likely lead to significant operational inefficiencies, inadequate training for personnel, and potential security vulnerabilities due to untested technology. It risks violating federal guidelines that mandate thorough vetting of new security tools and could lead to non-compliance with data privacy regulations, if the system is not properly secured or if passenger data is mishandled. Another professionally unacceptable approach is to delay implementation indefinitely due to concerns about potential passenger inconvenience. While passenger experience is a consideration, the primary mandate of the FAMS is to ensure aviation security. A complete halt to implementing a potentially beneficial security enhancement without exploring mitigation strategies for passenger flow demonstrates a failure to balance competing priorities and a lack of proactive problem solving. This neglects the FAM's core mission and the federal imperative to continuously improve aviation security. Finally, an approach that focuses solely on acquiring the most advanced technology without considering the operational integration and training needs of FAM's personnel in California is also flawed. Technology is only as effective as the personnel who operate it. This approach overlooks the critical human element in security operations and risks deploying a system that cannot be effectively utilized, thereby undermining the intended security benefits and potentially leading to compliance issues if operational protocols are not met. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the mission objectives and regulatory requirements. This should be followed by a thorough risk assessment of any proposed implementation, considering both security benefits and potential drawbacks. A phased approach, incorporating pilot testing and continuous evaluation, allows for adaptive management and ensures that decisions are data-driven and aligned with both operational effectiveness and legal compliance. Question 8. The assessment process reveals a significant challenge in evaluating the advanced tactical decision-making capabilities of Federal Air Marshal Service, FAMS, candidates in a simulated high-stress environment within the state of Virginia. Considering the need for both rigorous evaluation and candidate safety, which of the following implementation strategies would best align with professional standards and operational readiness? Option A. Expedite the assessment process by reducing the duration and complexity of tactical simulations to process a larger number of candidates efficiently. Option B. Primarily rely on theoretical knowledge assessments and basic physical fitness evaluations, with minimal emphasis on practical, high-stress tactical simulations. Option C. Immediately subject all candidates to the most demanding and complex tactical simulations available to accurately gauge their performance under extreme pressure from the outset. Option D. Implement a series of progressively complex tactical simulations, starting with foundational scenarios and gradually increasing the intensity, realism, and decision-making demands, with continuous safety monitoring. Correct answer is D. Implement a series of progressively complex tactical simulations, starting with foundational scenarios and gradually increasing the intensity, realism, and decision-making demands, with continuous safety monitoring. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a critical implementation challenge for the Federal Air Marshal Service, FAMS, in assessing candidates for their advanced tactical skills. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for rigorous, realistic training simulations with the paramount importance of candidate safety and the integrity of the assessment itself. Misjudging the intensity or scope of a simulation can lead to undue risk for participants or compromise the validity of the evaluation, potentially allowing unqualified individuals to pass or causing undue stress to capable ones. Careful judgment is required to ensure the assessment accurately reflects real-world operational demands without exceeding acceptable risk parameters. The best approach involves a phased implementation of advanced tactical simulations, starting with controlled, lower-intensity scenarios that gradually increase in complexity and realism. This method is correct because it aligns with the FAM's commitment to thorough candidate evaluation while prioritizing safety and adherence to established operational protocols. By progressively introducing more demanding elements, assessors can observe a candidate's adaptability, decision-making under pressure, and technical proficiency in a controlled environment. This allows for early identification of skill gaps or areas needing further development without exposing candidates to overwhelming or unsafe conditions. This phased approach ensures that the assessment remains a valid measure of readiness for the demanding role of a Federal Air Marshal, respecting the inherent risks of the profession while mitigating unnecessary dangers during the evaluation. An approach that immediately subjects candidates to the most extreme and complex tactical simulations without prior acclimatization is professionally unacceptable. This fails to provide a structured learning and evaluation curve, potentially leading to unsafe conditions and an inaccurate assessment of a candidate's true capabilities. It disregards the principle of progressive skill development and could result in candidates being overwhelmed, leading to poor performance that doesn't reflect their potential. Another unacceptable approach is to rely solely on theoretical knowledge and less demanding physical fitness tests, neglecting the practical application of advanced tactical skills. This is a significant ethical and professional failure, as it does not adequately prepare or assess individuals for the high-stakes, dynamic nature of FAMS operations. The core of the FAMS role involves rapid, decisive action in unpredictable environments, which cannot be accurately gauged through theoretical means alone. Finally, an approach that prioritizes speed of assessment over thoroughness, cutting corners on simulation realism or observation protocols, is also professionally unsound. This undermines the integrity of the FAMS selection process and could lead to the certification of individuals who are not adequately prepared for the critical responsibilities they would undertake. It violates the ethical obligation to ensure only the most competent individuals are entrusted with passenger safety. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that emphasizes risk assessment, progressive exposure, and continuous evaluation. This involves understanding the specific competencies required for the role, designing simulations that progressively build towards those competencies, and establishing clear safety protocols and performance benchmarks. Regular review and adaptation of the assessment process based on feedback and observed candidate performance are crucial for maintaining both effectiveness and safety. Question 9. Compliance review shows a Federal Air Marshal Service (FAMS) officer on a flight operating within the airspace of California observed an individual exhibiting behavior that, in the officer's judgment, posed an immediate and serious threat to the safety of the flight. The officer successfully neutralized the threat. However, the officer then spent an extended period meticulously documenting every detail of the individual's actions and the neutralization process in a preliminary report before communicating the incident to the relevant authorities. Which of the following approaches best reflects the required professional conduct and regulatory compliance for a FAMS officer in this scenario? Option A. Prioritize completing a comprehensive written report of the incident before taking any action to neutralize the perceived threat. Option B. Neutralize the threat and then delay reporting the incident until a full debriefing with supervisors can be conducted, even if this significantly postpones official notification. Option C. Neutralize the threat and then provide only a brief verbal summary of the incident to authorities, deeming further written documentation unnecessary. Option D. Immediately neutralize the threat and then promptly and thoroughly report the incident, including all relevant details, to the appropriate authorities. The correct answer is D. Immediately neutralize the threat and then promptly and thoroughly report the incident, including all relevant details, to the appropriate authorities. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between maintaining operational security and ensuring timely, accurate reporting of potential threats. The FAMS officer must balance the immediate need to neutralize a perceived threat with the procedural requirements for documenting and reporting such incidents. Failure to act decisively could compromise passenger safety, while an overly hasty or undocumented response could lead to procedural violations and potential disciplinary action. Careful judgment is required to navigate these competing demands effectively. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves immediate, decisive action to neutralize the perceived threat, followed by a thorough and accurate documentation of the incident. This approach prioritizes passenger safety by addressing the immediate danger. Subsequently, detailed reporting ensures accountability, allows for post-incident analysis, and fulfills regulatory obligations. This aligns with the FAMS mission to protect air travel and uphold security protocols. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves delaying immediate action to first complete a detailed written report. This critically compromises passenger safety by failing to address the immediate threat, violating the core mandate of the FAMS. Another incorrect approach is to take immediate action, but then omit or provide a superficial report. This failure in documentation undermines accountability, prevents proper investigation and analysis of the incident, and violates reporting requirements, potentially leading to a breakdown in security protocols. A third incorrect approach is to take immediate action and then rely solely on verbal reporting without any written follow-up. While verbal reporting may be a preliminary step, it lacks the permanence and detail required for official records, investigations, and compliance, thus failing to meet the comprehensive reporting standards. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes immediate safety and security, followed by rigorous adherence to reporting protocols. This involves a rapid threat assessment, decisive action, and then meticulous documentation. Understanding the specific reporting requirements and timelines is crucial. In situations of conflicting priorities, the immediate safety of passengers and crew must always take precedence. But this must be followed by prompt and accurate reporting to ensure the integrity of the security system. Question 10. The audit findings indicate that the Federal Air Marshal Service, FAMS, in the United States needs to refine its methodology for allocating air marshal resources across domestic flight segments. Currently, the service is exploring different approaches to optimize deployment efficiency while maintaining robust security. If a specific flight segment has a historical threat probability of 0.03, an assessed potential impact score of 7, on a scale of 1 to 10, and carries 180 passengers, while the average passenger load for comparable segments is 150, what would be the calculated risk score for this segment using a standard risk assessment formula that multiplies threat probability by impact score, and then by the ratio of the segment's passenger load to the average passenger load? Option A, 0.360. Option B, 0.420. Option C, 0.504. Option D, 0.300. Correct answer is C, 0.504. Explanation. The scenario presents a challenge in resource allocation and operational efficiency within the Federal Air Marshal Service, FAMS, in the United States, specifically concerning the deployment of air marshals to mitigate perceived threats. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need for robust security coverage with the finite resources available, requiring a data-driven and risk-informed approach to deployment. Misallocation can lead to either compromised security on certain flights or inefficient use of personnel and budget. The best approach involves a systematic calculation of threat probability and potential impact, using historical data and intelligence to inform deployment decisions. This method prioritizes flights with the highest risk profiles, ensuring that limited resources are deployed where they are most needed. The calculation would involve determining the weighted average risk score for each flight segment, considering factors such as passenger load, flight duration, destination, and known intelligence. For example, if a flight segment has a historical threat probability of 0.05, an impact score of 8 on a scale of 1-10, and a passenger load of 200, its risk score would be calculated as risk score equals threat probability times impact score times passenger load / average passenger load. Assuming an average passenger load of 150 for comparison, risk score equals 0.05 times 8 times 200 / 150 equals 0.4 times 1, 333 equals 0.533. This quantitative method aligns with the FAM's mandate to provide effective security by focusing resources on the most critical threats, adhering to principles of risk management and operational effectiveness as outlined in federal security directives and internal FAMS operational guidelines. An incorrect approach would be to deploy air marshals based solely on passenger volume, without considering the actual threat intelligence or potential impact. This would lead to an inefficient allocation of resources, potentially placing marshals on low-risk, high-volume flights while neglecting higher-risk, lower-volume flights. For instance, a flight with 300 passengers but minimal threat indicators would receive the same deployment consideration as a flight with 100 passengers, but significant intelligence suggesting a potential threat, violating the principle of risk-based deployment. Another incorrect approach would be to base deployment decisions on anecdotal evidence or personal judgment, without a standardized, data-driven methodology. This introduces subjectivity and bias, leading to inconsistent and potentially ineffective security coverage. It fails to meet the FAM's requirement for objective, quantifiable decision-making processes. A further incorrect approach would be to allocate resources based on a fixed percentage of all flights, irrespective of risk. This ignores the dynamic nature of threats and the varying levels of risk associated with different flight segments. It is an arbitrary allocation that does not optimize resource utilization for maximum security impact. The professional decision-making process for such situations requires a commitment to data analysis, adherence to established risk assessment frameworks, and a clear understanding of the FAMS mission. Professionals must be able to translate intelligence and operational data into actionable deployment strategies, utilizing quantitative methods to justify resource allocation and ensure accountability. This involves continuous evaluation of the effectiveness of deployment strategies and adaptation based on evolving threat landscapes and performance metrics. Question 11. The assessment process reveals a critical implementation challenge for the Federal Air Marshal Service (FAMS) in California regarding the integration of new biometric screening technology. Considering the paramount importance of both operational effectiveness and adherence to federal privacy regulations, which of the following implementation strategies represents the most professionally sound and compliant approach? Option A. Implement a phased rollout of the biometric technology, beginning with comprehensive personnel training and extensive pilot testing in controlled environments to identify and resolve any technical or privacy-related issues before full operational deployment. Option B. Rely exclusively on the technology vendor's standard training modules and documentation for FAMS personnel in California, and proceed with full operational deployment without further internal validation or testing. Option C. Immediately deploy the new biometric screening technology across all FAMS operations in California to maximize its security benefits as quickly as possible, assuming personnel can adapt on the job. Option D. Prioritize rapid deployment of the biometric technology in live operational settings across California, addressing any technical malfunctions or privacy concerns as they arise during actual missions. The correct answer is A. Implement a phased rollout of the biometric technology, beginning with comprehensive personnel training and extensive pilot testing in controlled environments to identify and resolve any technical or privacy-related issues before full operational deployment. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a critical implementation challenge for the Federal Air Marshal Service (FAMS) in California regarding the integration of new biometric screening technology. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires FAMS personnel to balance the imperative of enhanced security with the potential for operational disruptions and the need for strict adherence to privacy regulations. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the implementation does not compromise the FAMS mission or violate established legal and ethical standards. The best approach involves a phased implementation strategy that prioritizes comprehensive training and robust testing within controlled environments before full deployment. This method is correct because it aligns with the FAMS mandate to maintain the highest levels of aviation security while respecting individual privacy rights, as guided by federal regulations, such as those pertaining to data collection and use by law enforcement agencies. A phased rollout allows for the identification and mitigation of technical glitches, ensures personnel are proficient in operating the new technology, and provides opportunities to address any privacy concerns proactively, thereby minimizing the risk of security breaches or legal challenges. This systematic approach ensures that operational readiness and compliance are paramount. An incorrect approach involves immediately deploying the new biometric technology across all FAMS operations in California without adequate pilot testing or personnel training. This is professionally unacceptable because it introduces significant risks of system failures, operational delays, and potential privacy violations. Without proper training, personnel may misuse the technology or fail to operate it effectively, compromising security. Furthermore, a hasty deployment without thorough privacy impact assessments could lead to non-compliance with federal data protection laws, resulting in legal repercussions and erosion of public trust. Another incorrect approach is to bypass established protocols for technology integration and rely solely on vendor-provided training materials without internal validation. This is professionally unacceptable, as it outsources critical decision-making regarding security and privacy compliance to a third party, potentially overlooking specific FAMS operational needs and regulatory nuances within California. It also fails to establish internal accountability for the successful and compliant implementation of the technology. A final incorrect approach is to prioritize speed of deployment over thoroughness, leading to the use of the technology in live operational settings before all personnel have demonstrated competency and before all potential privacy implications have been fully addressed. This is professionally unacceptable because it places the security of air travel and the privacy of individuals at undue risk. It demonstrates a failure to uphold the FAMS commitment to rigorous standards and responsible technology adoption. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework that begins with a thorough risk assessment, considering both security benefits and potential drawbacks. This should be followed by a detailed planning phase that includes stakeholder consultation, development of comprehensive training programs, and rigorous testing protocols. Continuous evaluation and adaptation based on feedback and performance data are crucial throughout the implementation process. Adherence to all relevant federal regulations and ethical guidelines must be a non-negotiable component of every decision. Question 12. Cost-benefit analysis shows that a new advanced threat detection technology could significantly enhance aviation security, but its implementation would require a substantial budgetary increase for the Federal Air Marshal Service, FAMS, in Maryland. Considering the operational and financial constraints faced by federal agencies, which approach best justifies the acquisition and deployment of this technology? Option A. Acquire the technology because it is the latest advancement in security equipment and has been adopted by several international aviation security bodies, regardless of its specific cost-effectiveness for the FAMS. Option B. Procure the technology based on positive testimonials from a small group of field agents who have encountered similar systems, assuming its effectiveness will translate directly to FAMS operations. Option C. Implement the new technology immediately due to the perceived increase in threat levels, without a detailed financial justification, to ensure maximum immediate security coverage. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive cost-benefit analysis that quantifies expected security improvements against all associated costs, including procurement, training, and maintenance, to demonstrate a clear return on investment aligned with federal fiscal responsibility principles. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive cost-benefit analysis that quantifies expected security improvements against all associated costs, including procurement, training, and maintenance, to demonstrate a clear return on investment aligned with federal fiscal responsibility principles. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for enhanced security measures with the potential for significant financial strain on the Federal Air Marshal Service, FAMS. The decision-making process is complicated by the need to justify resource allocation, demonstrate effectiveness, and adhere to strict budgetary constraints, all while maintaining the highest standards of aviation security. The FAMS operates under the authority of the Transportation Security Administration, TSA, which in turn is part of the Department of Homeland Security, DHS. Therefore, any implementation must align with DHS directives and federal appropriations. Correct approach analysis. The most professionally sound approach involves conducting a thorough, data-driven cost-benefit analysis that quantifies both the expected security enhancements and the associated financial and operational costs. This approach is correct because it aligns with federal procurement and budgeting principles, which mandate that resources be allocated efficiently and effectively. Specifically, the Government Accountability Office, GAO, and Office of Management and Budget, guidelines emphasize the importance of evidence-based decision-making for federal programs. By demonstrating a clear return on investment in terms of improved security outcomes versus expenditure, the FAMS can build a strong case for the proposed technology, ensuring compliance with fiscal responsibility mandates and maximizing the impact of taxpayer dollars. This methodical approach also allows for the identification of potential risks and mitigation strategies, further strengthening the justification for investment. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the new technology without a comprehensive cost-benefit analysis, based solely on the perceived threat level, is professionally unacceptable. This approach disregards the fundamental requirement for fiscal accountability in federal agencies. It risks misallocating limited resources, potentially diverting funds from other critical security functions or operational needs, and could lead to the adoption of an expensive solution that does not offer a proportional increase in security effectiveness. This failure to justify expenditure based on demonstrable benefits is a violation of sound financial management principles. adopting the technology based on anecdotal evidence or the enthusiastic endorsement of a few operational personnel, without rigorous validation or comparative analysis, is also professionally unsound. While operational input is valuable, it cannot substitute for objective data and systematic evaluation. This approach lacks the necessary rigor to satisfy federal oversight bodies and could result in the acquisition of a system that is either redundant, inefficient, or not the most effective solution available for the identified threat. It bypasses the due diligence required to ensure the best use of public funds, prioritizing the acquisition of the technology solely based on its cutting-edge nature or its adoption by other, unrelated agencies, without assessing its specific applicability and cost-effectiveness for the FAMS, is a flawed strategy. This approach risks succumbing to technological hype rather than making a strategic investment. It fails to consider the unique operational environment and specific security requirements of the FAMS, potentially leading to an expensive purchase that does not adequately address the intended security challenges or integrate seamlessly with existing FAMS protocols. Professional reasoning. Professionals in federal agencies like the FAMS must employ a structured decision-making framework that prioritizes evidence-based justification for all resource allocations. This framework should begin with a clear identification of the problem or security gap, followed by the exploration of potential solutions. For each solution, a rigorous cost-benefit analysis must be conducted, considering not only direct financial costs, but also operational impacts, training requirements, and long-term maintenance. This analysis should be supported by data, expert opinions, and, where applicable, pilot testing. The decision should then be made based on which option offers the greatest security enhancement for the most efficient use of taxpayer funds, while also ensuring compliance with all relevant federal regulations and directives from oversight bodies like the GAO and OMB. Question 13. The performance metrics show a significant increase in the successful identification of potential security threats by federal air marshals operating in the New York airspace, following the recent implementation of a new advanced behavioral analysis training program. However, there are also anecdotal reports from some marshals suggesting that the training has led to an over-reliance on subtle behavioral cues, potentially increasing the risk of misidentification and disproportionate scrutiny of certain passenger demographics. Considering the FAM's mandate to ensure aviation security while respecting civil liberties, what is the most prudent course of action for FAM's leadership in New York? Option A. Halt all further implementation of the new training program and revert to previous protocols until a complete overhaul of the training methodology can be conducted. Based on the initial concerns raised, Option B. Immediately expand the new training program to all FAMS personnel nationwide, given the positive initial performance metrics, and address any reported issues through ad hoc adjustments as they arise. Option C. Initiate a comprehensive review of the new training program's effectiveness, incorporating both quantitative performance data and qualitative feedback from marshals and passenger screening personnel to identify areas for refinement and ensure adherence to FAMS directives and ethical guidelines. Option D. Disregard the anecdotal reports of potential misidentification as minor outliers, attributing them to individual marshal bias, and continue with the full implementation of the new training program as planned. The correct answer is C. Initiate a comprehensive review of the new training program's effectiveness, incorporating both quantitative performance data and qualitative feedback from marshals and passenger screening personnel to identify areas for refinement and ensure adherence to FAMS directives and ethical guidelines. Explanation. The performance metrics show a concerning trend in the Federal Air Marshal Service, FAMS, assessment battery, specifically regarding the implementation of new threat detection protocols in the New York airspace. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a delicate balance between operational effectiveness, adherence to strict FAMS directives, and the ethical imperative to ensure the safety of the traveling public without compromising civil liberties. Pressure to demonstrate immediate results from the new protocols, coupled with the inherent risks of air travel, necessitates careful judgment and a thorough understanding of the FAM's mandate. The best approach involves a systematic and data-driven evaluation of the new protocol's effectiveness, focusing on objective performance indicators while remaining vigilant for any unintended consequences. This includes rigorously analyzing the FAM's own internal assessment data, cross-referencing it with incident reports and passenger feedback, and consulting with experienced FAMS personnel on the ground. This approach is correct because it aligns with the FAM's core mission of deterring and combating air piracy and terrorism, as outlined in Department of Homeland Security directives and FAM's Standard Operating Procedures, SOP. These directives emphasize evidence-based decision-making and continuous improvement, ensuring that operational changes are both effective and justifiable. Furthermore, it upholds the ethical obligation to deploy resources efficiently and responsibly, minimizing any potential for overreach or undue disruption to passengers. An approach that prioritizes immediate, widespread implementation of the new protocols based on preliminary positive indicators, without a comprehensive review of potential drawbacks or long-term efficacy, is professionally unacceptable. This fails to adhere to the FAM's requirement for thorough validation of new procedures before full-scale deployment, potentially leading to inefficient resource allocation or the adoption of ineffective tactics. Another unacceptable approach involves dismissing negative feedback or anomalies in the performance metrics as isolated incidents without further investigation. This neglects the FAM's duty to identify and address systemic issues that could compromise security or operational integrity, violating the principle of continuous improvement and potentially overlooking critical vulnerabilities. Finally, an approach that focuses solely on achieving quantifiable metrics without considering the qualitative impact on passenger experience or the potential for profiling is also professionally unsound. This overlooks the ethical considerations of fair treatment and the importance of maintaining public trust, which are integral to the FAM's long-term success. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with clearly defining the problem and the desired outcomes. This is followed by gathering and analyzing all relevant data, including performance metrics, incident reports, and qualitative feedback. Next, potential solutions or adjustments to existing protocols are brainstormed and evaluated against FAM's directives, ethical guidelines, and operational feasibility. The chosen course of action should then be implemented with clear communication and a plan for ongoing monitoring and evaluation. This iterative process ensures that decisions are informed, justifiable, and aligned with the FAM's mission and values. Question 14. During the evaluation of a new advanced threat detection system for the Federal Air Marshal Service FAMS in the United States, what implementation strategy best balances rapid technological adoption with the critical need for personnel proficiency and operational integration? Option A. Deploy the new system immediately across all operational flights, with a directive for air marshals to familiarize themselves with the technology through available user manuals and on-the-job experience. Option B. Roll out the new system with minimal training, focusing solely on the technical operation of the device, assuming that air marshals will adapt their tactical procedures as needed during active missions. Option C. Postpone the full implementation of the new system indefinitely until a perfect, universally accepted training methodology can be developed to avoid any potential disruption. Option D. Implement the new system in phases, beginning with comprehensive classroom and simulated training for all personnel, followed by gradual integration into operational flights with ongoing mentorship and performance monitoring. The correct answer is D. Implement the new system in phases, beginning with comprehensive classroom and simulated training for all personnel, followed by gradual integration into operational flights with ongoing mentorship and performance monitoring. Explanation. The scenario presents a professional challenge related to the implementation of new security protocols within the Federal Air Marshal Service, FAMS. The core difficulty lies in balancing the imperative to rapidly integrate advanced threat detection technology with the need to ensure all personnel are adequately trained and understand the operational implications of these changes. This requires careful judgment to avoid compromising operational effectiveness or the safety of air travel. The best approach involves a phased implementation that prioritizes comprehensive training and familiarization before full operational deployment. This ensures that air marshals not only understand how to use the new technology, but also how it integrates into existing tactical procedures and decision-making frameworks. This approach is correct because it aligns with the FAM's mandate to maintain the highest standards of aviation security. Regulatory and ethical obligations demand that personnel are fully competent before being entrusted with critical security functions. Prioritizing training and gradual integration minimizes the risk of errors stemming from unfamiliarity with new equipment or procedures, thereby upholding the FAM's commitment to public safety and operational integrity. An incorrect approach would be to deploy the new technology immediately without sufficient training, relying on on-the-job learning. This fails to meet the FAM's duty of care to its personnel and the flying public. Ethically, it is unacceptable to place individuals in high-stakes situations without ensuring they possess the necessary skills and knowledge. This approach risks operational failures and compromises the effectiveness of the security mission. Another incorrect approach would be to delay the implementation indefinitely due to concerns about the learning curve, without establishing a clear plan for future training and integration. This inaction can lead to the FAMS falling behind evolving threats and technological advancements, potentially leaving security vulnerabilities unaddressed. It fails to proactively manage the implementation challenge and could be seen as a dereliction of duty to maintain a state-of-the-art security force. A further incorrect approach might involve implementing the technology with only basic operational instructions, neglecting the tactical and procedural implications. This overlooks the fact that effective security is not just about operating equipment, but about understanding its role within a broader operational context. It fails to equip air marshals with the full understanding needed to make informed decisions under pressure, thus undermining the overall security posture. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that emphasizes risk assessment, stakeholder consultation, and a commitment to continuous improvement. This involves identifying potential challenges, evaluating their impact, and developing mitigation strategies. For new technology implementation, this means prioritizing training and operational readiness, ensuring that all personnel are equipped to perform their duties effectively and safely. Question 15. What factors determine the appropriate method for disseminating sensitive intelligence regarding potential aviation threats to other Federal Air Marshal Service (FAMS) personnel in California? Option A. The desire to inform all available FAMS personnel to ensure maximum awareness, regardless of their direct involvement in the specific threat. Option B. The intelligence's potential to reveal specific operational tactics or surveillance methods, leading to its complete withholding from all but the most senior leadership. Option C. The perceived urgency of the threat and the personal relationships between the air marshal and other personnel who might benefit from immediate notification. Option D. The intelligence's verified reliability, its potential impact on ongoing operations, and the established FAMS protocols for information dissemination, including the need for supervisory review and authorization. The correct answer is D. The intelligence's verified reliability, its potential impact on ongoing operations, and the established FAMS protocols for information dissemination, including the need for supervisory review and authorization. Explanation. The scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the inherent tension between operational security and the need for timely, accurate information dissemination within the Federal Air Marshal Service (FAMS). The FAMS operates under strict directives from the Transportation Security Administration (SA) and the Department of Homeland Security (DHS), which prioritize national security and the prevention of aviation-related threats. This necessitates a careful balance when dealing with sensitive intelligence that could impact ongoing operations or compromise investigative integrity. The professional challenge lies in discerning when and how to share information that, while potentially valuable, could also inadvertently reveal operational methods, expose sources, or tip off potential adversaries. This requires a deep understanding of FAMS protocols, interagency cooperation guidelines, and the ethical imperative to protect both the mission and the individuals involved. The best approach involves a structured, protocol-driven method of information sharing that prioritizes verification and appropriate clearance. This entails meticulously documenting the intelligence, assessing its reliability and potential impact, and then submitting it through established FAMS channels for review by designated intelligence analysts and supervisory personnel. This process ensures that the information is vetted for accuracy, its dissemination is controlled according to established security protocols, and it is shared only with authorized personnel who have a legitimate need to know. This aligns with FAMS Standard Operating Procedures, SOP, and TSA directives that emphasize controlled intelligence sharing to maintain operational effectiveness and prevent compromise. The ethical justification rests on the principle of responsible stewardship of sensitive information and the duty to uphold the integrity of FAMS operations. An incorrect approach would be to immediately disseminate the intelligence to all available FAMS personnel without proper vetting or authorization. This bypasses essential security checks and could lead to premature disclosure of sensitive operational details, potentially jeopardizing ongoing investigations or alerting individuals of interest to FAMS surveillance. This violates FAMS SOPs and TSA guidelines regarding the controlled dissemination of intelligence. Another incorrect approach would be to withhold the intelligence entirely due to uncertainty about its immediate applicability. A caution is warranted. Failing to report potentially critical intelligence through proper channels deprives the FAMS and its partner agencies of valuable information that could inform threat assessments and operational planning. This demonstrates a failure to adhere to the FAMS mandate of proactive threat mitigation and intelligence gathering. A further incorrect approach would be to share the intelligence informally with a select group of trusted colleagues outside of official channels. This circumvents established security protocols and creates an unauthorized information-sharing network. Such actions undermine the integrity of the FAMS intelligence dissemination process, increase the risk of leaks, and could lead to disciplinary action for violating security regulations. The professional reasoning process for such situations should involve a clear understanding of the FAMS mission and its regulatory framework. When faced with new intelligence, an air marshal should ask, what are the established protocols for handling and disseminating this type of information? Who are the authorized recipients? What are the potential risks of sharing this information prematurely or inappropriately? What are the potential consequences of withholding this information? By systematically addressing these questions and adhering to established procedures, professionals can ensure that intelligence is managed responsibly and effectively, thereby upholding the security and integrity of FAMS operations. Question 16. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of a disruptive passenger incident occurring on a flight departing from Los Angeles International Airport LAX within the next 6 months, with a high potential impact on passenger safety and operational continuity. Considering this, which of the following represents the most effective and professionally sound implementation strategy for the Federal Air Marshal Service, FAMS? Option A. Continuously monitor threat intelligence specific to flights originating from LAX. Analyze passenger manifests for potential red flags based on established FAMS protocols, and coordinate closely with airport security and airline personnel to identify and address suspicious behaviors discreetly. Option B. Implement a blanket increase in visible FAMS presence on all flights departing LAX, regardless of specific threat intelligence. To maximize deterrence, Option C. Rely solely on passenger profiling based on broad demographic characteristics to identify potential threats on flights departing LAX. Option D. Delay intervention and focus resources on responding to disruptive incidents only after they have actively begun to occur on flights departing LAX. The correct answer is A. Continuously monitor threat intelligence specific to flights originating from LAX. Analyze passenger manifests for potential red flags based on established FAMS protocols, and coordinate closely with airport security and airline personnel to identify and address suspicious behaviors discreetly. Explanation. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of a disruptive passenger incident occurring on a flight departing from Los Angeles International Airport, LAX, within the next 6 months, with a high potential impact on passenger safety and operational continuity. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the Federal Air Marshal Service, FAMS, to balance proactive threat mitigation with the dynamic and unpredictable nature of air travel, all while adhering to strict legal and ethical guidelines governing law enforcement actions in a civilian environment. The need for swift, decisive action must be tempered by the imperative to respect individual rights and avoid unnecessary escalation. The best approach involves a layered strategy that prioritizes intelligence gathering and targeted deployment. This means continuously monitoring threat intelligence specific to flights originating from LAX, analyzing passenger manifests for potential red flags based on established FAMS protocols, and coordinating closely with airport security and airline personnel to identify and address suspicious behaviors discreetly. This approach is correct because it aligns with the FAMS mission to deter and defeat aviation terrorism by focusing resources where they are most likely to be effective, while minimizing disruption to the general traveling public. It adheres to the legal framework that permits law enforcement intervention based on reasonable suspicion or probable cause, and ethically prioritizes the safety of all passengers and crew through a measured and informed response. An incorrect approach would be to implement a blanket increase in visible FAMS presence on all flights departing LAX, regardless of specific threat intelligence. This is professionally unacceptable because it is an inefficient allocation of resources, potentially leading to oversurveillance and a negative impact on the passenger experience without a corresponding increase in actual security effectiveness. It also risks creating a perception of heightened threat that may not be warranted, potentially causing undue alarm. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on passenger profiling based on broad demographic characteristics. This is ethically and legally flawed, as it can lead to discriminatory practices and is not supported by evidence-based threat assessment. FAMS protocols are designed to identify specific behavioral indicators and intelligence-driven red flags, not to profile individuals based on their background. A third incorrect approach is to delay intervention until a disruptive incident is actively occurring. This is professionally unacceptable because it fails to leverage the proactive and deterrent aspects of the FAMS mission. The goal is to prevent incidents before they escalate, not merely to respond to them once they have begun, which would significantly compromise passenger safety and operational integrity. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough assessment of available intelligence, followed by a risk-based evaluation of potential threats. This involves considering the likelihood and impact of various scenarios, and then developing a response strategy that is proportionate, legally sound, and ethically justifiable. Continuous evaluation and adaptation of strategies based on evolving intelligence and operational realities are crucial for effective implementation. Question 17. Market research demonstrates that public awareness of potential threats can influence public behavior and operational effectiveness. Considering the Federal Air Marshal Services, FAMS, mandate to ensure aviation security, what is the most appropriate course of action for a FAMS agent who receives credible, but unconfirmed, intelligence regarding a potential threat to a specific flight departing from Chicago O'Hare International Airport in Illinois? Option A. Discuss the potential threat with a close friend outside of the agency to gauge their reaction and potential impact on public perception. Option B. Inform trusted colleagues within the FAMS who are not directly involved in the initial intelligence gathering to solicit their opinions on the threat's credibility. Option C. Contact the local FBI field office directly to share the intelligence, believing that broader awareness will expedite a response. Option D. Immediately report the intelligence through the established FAMS reporting channels, adhering to all internal protocols for verification and dissemination, and await further instructions from authorized personnel. Correct answer is D. Immediately report the intelligence through the established FAMS reporting channels, adhering to all internal protocols for verification and dissemination, and await further instructions from authorized personnel. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the inherent tension between operational security and the need for timely, accurate information dissemination within a critical federal agency. The Federal Air Marshal Service, FAMS, operates under stringent regulations designed to maintain the highest levels of national security. Balancing the immediate need to inform relevant parties about a potential threat with the imperative to avoid compromising ongoing investigations or operational tactics requires careful judgment and adherence to established protocols. Missteps can have severe consequences, including jeopardizing investigation, endangering personnel, or creating public panic. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves adhering strictly to established FAMS communication protocols for reporting and disseminating sensitive information. This approach prioritizes verification of information through official channels, utilizing designated reporting structures, and ensuring that any dissemination is authorized and follows the chain of command. This is correct because it aligns with the FAMS regulatory framework, which emphasizes controlled information flow to prevent leaks, maintain operational integrity, and ensure that intelligence is acted upon by the appropriate authorities in a coordinated manner. Unauthorized or premature dissemination could violate federal regulations concerning classified information and operational security. Incorrect approach is analysis. Disseminating preliminary, unverified information to colleagues outside the immediate investigation team, even with good intentions, is professionally unacceptable. This fails to adhere to FAMS communication protocols and risks spreading misinformation, potentially compromising operational security by alerting unauthorized individuals to an ongoing situation or investigation. It bypasses the established chain of command and verification processes, which are critical for maintaining accuracy and preventing premature disclosure of sensitive intelligence. Sharing details of the potential threat with external law enforcement agencies without prior authorization from FAMS leadership is also professionally unacceptable. While interagency cooperation is important, it must be conducted through official channels and in accordance with established protocols. Unauthorized disclosure could violate federal regulations regarding the sharing of sensitive operational details and could inadvertently compromise the FAM's investigative methods or ongoing operations. Discussing the specifics of the potential threat with family members or friends outside of official duties is a severe ethical and regulatory failure. This constitutes a breach of confidentiality and a violation of federal regulations governing the handling of sensitive information. Such actions not only endanger national security, but also undermine public trust in the FAMS and could lead to disciplinary action, including termination and potential legal repercussions. Professional reasoning. Professionals in sensitive roles like the FAMS must adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established protocols and regulations above all else. This involves a clear understanding of the chain of command, authorized communication channels, and the classification levels of information. When faced with a situation involving potential threats, the professional's first step should always be to consult and follow the agency's established reporting and dissemination procedures. If there is any ambiguity, seeking clarification from a supervisor or designated authority is paramount. The principle of need to know and need to disseminate must guide all actions, ensuring that information is shared only with those who require it for official purposes and through authorized means. Question 18. The assessment process reveals that the Federal Air Marshal Service, FAMS, in California is considering the implementation of a new, advanced threat detection technology that utilizes passive biometric scanning. This technology promises to significantly enhance passenger screening efficiency by identifying individuals of interest based on subtle physiological indicators. But its data collection and analysis capabilities extend beyond current FAMS operational guidelines. What is the most appropriate course of action for FAMS leadership in California to ensure the lawful and ethical integration of this technology? Option A. Conduct a thorough legal and policy review of the technology's capabilities, consulting with FAMS legal counsel and relevant federal oversight agencies to ensure compliance with U.S. federal laws and FAMS directives before deployment. Option B. Seek external technology vendors to provide a comprehensive legal compliance report, but defer final decision-making on deployment until after the technology has been in operational use for a significant period. Option C. Proceed with the immediate deployment of the technology to leverage its perceived security benefits, with a plan to address any legal or policy concerns that may arise post-implementation. Option D. Implement the technology on a limited trial basis without extensive legal review, relying on the discretion of field agents to manage data collection and privacy considerations. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough legal and policy review of the technology's capabilities, consulting with FAMS legal counsel and relevant federal oversight agencies to ensure compliance with U.S. federal laws and FAMS directives before deployment. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a critical implementation challenge for the Federal Air Marshal Service, FAMS, in California regarding the integration of new threat detection technology. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires FAMS personnel to balance operational effectiveness with strict adherence to established protocols and legal frameworks governing surveillance and data handling within the United States. The rapid evolution of technology often outpaces regulatory updates, creating a gray area where judgment and a thorough understanding of existing legal precedents are paramount. The best approach involves a proactive and collaborative strategy that prioritizes legal compliance and operational integrity. This entails thoroughly reviewing the new technology's capabilities against existing federal statutes and FAMS operational guidelines, specifically those pertaining to privacy and data collection in public transportation settings, as governed by U.S. federal law. It requires engaging with legal counsel and relevant oversight bodies to ensure the technology's deployment aligns with constitutional protections and FAMS directives before full implementation. This ensures that the technology is used in a manner that is both effective for security and legally sound, minimizing the risk of civil liberties violations and subsequent legal challenges. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the technology's deployment based solely on its perceived operational benefits, without a comprehensive legal and regulatory review. This failure to conduct due diligence risks violating federal privacy laws, such as those derived from the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable searches and seizures, and potentially FAMS-specific directives on data acquisition and retention. Another unacceptable approach is to implement the technology with a limited understanding of its data output and potential for misuse, thereby creating a significant risk of unauthorized surveillance or data breaches, which would contravene federal data security regulations and FAMS ethical standards. Finally, delaying the integration of necessary legal and policy reviews until after the technology is in use, or attempting to retroactively justify its deployment, demonstrates a disregard for established legal processes and professional accountability, exposing the FAMS to significant legal and reputational damage. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the core objective, enhanced security, then systematically assesses potential implementation strategies against legal and regulatory constraints. This involves seeking expert legal and policy advice early in the process, conducting thorough risk assessments that consider both operational and civil liberties implications, and prioritizing transparent communication with stakeholders. A commitment to continuous review and adaptation of protocols in light of technological advancements and evolving legal interpretations is also crucial. Question 19. The assessment process reveals a significant challenge in integrating a newly developed, advanced sensor system designed to detect subtle physiological indicators of elevated stress in passengers. This system promises to augment existing threat detection capabilities for Federal Air Marshal Service (FAMS) personnel operating on flights within the United States. However, concerns have been raised about the practical implications of its deployment, including the training burden on air marshals and its seamless integration into the fast-paced, high-stakes environment of in-flight security. Which of the following implementation strategies best addresses these challenges while upholding the FAM's commitment to operational excellence and passenger safety? Option A. Focus solely on the technological specifications and theoretical capabilities of the sensor system, assuming that its advanced nature will inherently improve security outcomes without requiring extensive operational validation or specialized training. Option B. Initiate a comprehensive pilot program in select FAMS field offices, involving extensive hands-on training for a designated group of air marshals, followed by a data-driven evaluation of the system's performance, reliability, and impact on operational procedures before a wider rollout. Option C. Prioritize the deployment of the sensor system to air marshals whose roles are perceived to be more directly involved in passenger interaction, assuming other personnel can adapt as needed over time. Option D. Immediately equip all FAMS aircraft with the new sensor system and mandate its use by all air marshals, relying on initial vendor-provided training materials and on-the-job learning for proficiency. The correct answer is B. Initiate a comprehensive pilot program in select FAMS field offices, involving extensive hands-on training for a designated group of air marshals, followed by a data-driven evaluation of the system's performance, reliability, and impact on operational procedures before a wider rollout. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a critical implementation challenge within the Federal Air Marshal Service (FAMS) regarding the integration of new threat detection technologies. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the imperative of enhanced security with the practical realities of operational deployment, personnel training, and the potential for unintended consequences. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the implementation of new technologies does not compromise existing security protocols or the effectiveness of FAMS personnel. The best approach involves a phased, data-driven implementation strategy. This entails conducting rigorous pilot programs in controlled environments to assess the technology's efficacy, reliability, and impact on operational workflows. Crucially, this phase must include comprehensive training for FAMS personnel on the new technology, its limitations, and its integration with existing procedures. Feedback loops from the pilot programs should be actively used to refine the technology and its deployment strategy before a full-scale rollout. This approach is correct because it aligns with the FAMS mandate for effective and efficient threat mitigation, as outlined in its operational directives and training manuals, which emphasize a systematic and evidence-based approach to adopting new security measures. It prioritizes operational readiness and personnel proficiency, ensuring that technological advancements genuinely enhance, rather than hinder, the FAMS mission. An incorrect approach would be to immediately deploy the new technology across all FAMS operations without adequate testing or training. This fails to account for potential technical glitches, unforeseen operational disruptions, and the critical need for personnel to be proficient in using the new tools. Such a hasty implementation could lead to a decrease in operational effectiveness and potentially create new security vulnerabilities, directly contravening the FAMS core mission and its established protocols for adopting new equipment. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize the technology's perceived sophistication over its practical utility and integration with existing FAMS procedures. This might involve overlooking essential aspects like user interface design, compatibility with current communication systems, or the actual impact on the time required for threat assessment during a flight. This approach risks investing in technology that is not truly beneficial or may even complicate the work of air marshals, undermining the goal of enhanced security. A further incorrect approach would be to rely solely on vendor demonstrations and theoretical performance data without independent validation and real-world testing within the FAMS operational context. Vendor demonstrations, while informative, may not fully represent the complexities and dynamic nature of actual flight environments. This failure to conduct thorough, independent testing can lead to the adoption of technologies that are not robust enough for the demanding operational requirements of the FAMS, potentially compromising security. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework that begins with a clear definition of the problem or opportunity. This should be followed by the identification and evaluation of potential solutions, considering their feasibility, effectiveness, and alignment with organizational goals and regulatory requirements. A critical step is risk assessment, followed by the selection of the most appropriate solution and the development of a detailed implementation plan. Continuous monitoring and evaluation are essential to ensure the solution remains effective and to identify any necessary adjustments. Question 20. The control framework reveals that the Federal Air Marshal Service FAMS in the United States has an annual budget allocation for 1,200,000 flight hours. Intelligence suggests a 5% increase in potential threat flights requiring coverage compared to the previous year. The average flight duration for a threat flight is 4.5 hours. To ensure adequate coverage and account for a 10% margin of error in threat assessment and scheduling, what is the minimum number of flight hours the FAMS must plan for to meet its operational mandate for the upcoming year, assuming a 95% mission success rate is the target? Option A, 1,200,000 flight hours. Option B, 1,140,000 flight hours. Option C, 1,260,000 flight hours. Option D, 1,386,000 flight hours. The correct answer is C, 1,260,000 flight hours. Explanation. The control framework reveals a critical implementation challenge for the Federal Air Marshal Service FAMS in managing its operational readiness and resource allocation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a precise balance between maintaining a high level of preparedness for immediate deployment and adhering to strict budgetary constraints. These calculations can lead to either an understaffed service, compromising national security, or an over-budgeted operation, leading to fiscal irresponsibility and potential disciplinary action. Careful judgment is required to accurately forecast operational needs and translate them into actionable resource plans. The best approach involves a rigorous, data-driven calculation of required flight hours based on projected threat assessments and mandated response times, factoring in realistic crew, rest periods, and aircraft availability. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with the FAMS core mission of deterring and combating air piracy and terrorism. By using a conservative estimate for mission success rate and a standard calculation for average flight duration, the FAMS can accurately determine the minimum number of flight hours needed to meet its operational mandate. This method ensures that resources are allocated efficiently to cover anticipated threats while remaining within the allocated budget, adhering to principles of fiscal responsibility and operational effectiveness mandated by federal guidelines for national security agencies. An incorrect approach would be to simply divide the total allocated flight hours by the number of available marshals without considering the operational tempo or the need for specialized missions. This fails to account for the dynamic nature of threat assessments and the practical limitations of scheduling and crew availability, potentially leading to a shortfall in coverage. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize cost savings by reducing the number of flight hours below the calculated minimum, assuming a lower-than-average threat level. This is ethically and professionally unacceptable, as it directly compromises the FAM's ability to respond effectively to threats, potentially jeopardizing public safety. Finally, an approach that relies solely on historical flight hour data without adjusting for current intelligence and evolving threat landscapes is also flawed. This static method ignores the proactive nature of the FAM's mission and could leave critical routes or times unprotected. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the FAM's mission objectives and regulatory requirements. This involves continuous assessment of threat intelligence, translating these assessments into quantifiable operational needs, e.g., number of flights, duration, geographic coverage, and then calculating the necessary resources, flight hours, personnel to meet those needs. Budgetary constraints must be integrated into this process, but never at the expense of operational effectiveness or public safety. Regular review and adjustment of these calculations based on real-time data and performance metrics are crucial for maintaining optimal readiness and fiscal accountability.